The bandwidth for the Wild Boar Dog podcast this week was sponsored by Dougal's Den, www.dougalsden.co.uk. Amazing finds for the furry kind. I'm John Buskell.
And I'm Karen Wild.
And this is the Wild Boar Dog podcast, the podcast that gives you help and advice on how to train your dog.
In this week's show, we've got vet visits, making them fun, and what to do if they are not. Now, this is episode 29, and yes, you haven't missed an episode. I just can't count.
What do you mean by that, Karen?
Well, we said last week it was episode 27. I'm sure we did. And I then looked on iTunes for something completely different and realised that actually I've completely miscounted. And this is episode 29. So if you feel like you've gone through a bit of a time zone change or something, you haven't. It's just that I can't count and I should have checked.
Oh, well, these things happen across the airways. So, Karen, let's get started. A judge was arrested after her dogs attacked someone again in Bolton. Tell us about this.
This came up on the news this week. Now, a Crown Court judge was arrested on Monday and her dogs were seized after one of them attacked a passerby for the third time in a year. Now, I don't think it was the same passerby. You'd be pretty unfortunate, wouldn't you, if but that's like that old joke, isn't it, about taking your dog out for a tramp in the woods, but the tramp's getting a bit fed up with it. So anyway, back to the story. A judge was walking the dogs out and about. Two German Shepherds she has. One of the dogs bit the leg of a 22-year-old man, and the judge was arrested, taken to a police station. Now, as it turns out, that her dogs have bitten in the past. They've bitten other people. It just proves, doesn't it, John, that first of all, no one is above the law.
Absolutely not.
Secondly, the Dangerous Dogs Act does not protect the public, because if the Dangerous Dogs Act was an effective law, firstly, those dogs would have been muzzled in public, or something would have happened in the past to make sure that judge enforced the public safety, and that no matter how much you know the law and no matter what, everyone is vulnerable to this law. So every pet, it doesn't matter. Okay, they're German Shepherds. It doesn't make any difference. They're not pit bulls. They're not whatever the the banned breeds are. There are lots and lots of German Shepherds as pets that are absolutely lovely.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they shouldn't have a bad reputation. This made the news because it was a judge that was picked up by it. And I think, she's been... Obviously, the dogs have been seized under the Dangerous Dogs Act, and their fate depends on the outcome of the investigation. The fact that there are problems because the dogs have bitten in the past means that, who knows what's going to happen to them. But it was in the control of the owner at that point. So the owner, no matter who they are, they could be just, average person like me or you, or a judge who should know the law really well. If the dog bites, and under the law, that is counted as a criminal offence. So why not, if you know that your dog is likely to do anything like that, first of all, you make sure that they are muzzled, and secondly, you get some help and you try and sort it out so that you don't end up putting people at risk. I just feel like this story is so highlights the problems that we have with this law. The public weren't protected by the law. The law tries to protect people by taking away a certain breed, or kind of punishing when the deed has happened, and look what's happened. These dogs are bitten 3 times, so they've had, 2 learning opportunities before this third one that finally saw the person get arrested.
Yeah, but it's such a sad story, because I mean, I can pretty much see where this story is going to go. There are so many dogs that get euthanized. That's that the correct word? Euthanasia.
Yeah.
So many dogs that get put down, when something like this happens. Oh, what a sad story. What a sad story. And when you said, seeking help, where do you go to get help with something like this, Karen?
Well, I always think that, there are lots and lots of resources out there, full stop. There are an awful lot of people out there that are there to help. Finding a good person is harder. I accept that. And sometimes you might not quite know where to look. But if you went to, obviously the organisation I'm part of is the APBC, which is the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors. People who have been thoroughly vetted, if you'll excuse the pun, to have the right qualifications and the right experience to deal with problems such as aggression towards people. You need somebody who's really at the top of their game, because it's against the law. So you've got to have somebody who really knows what they're doing. So wishing the problem away is very easy to do. I constantly, if I see an aggression problem, very often the dog has bitten on multiple occasions before they finally got something done about it. And it's usually because the dog has bitten someone who's reported it, so it's been ignored for a while. And I don't think that owners are stupid. I don't think they are misguided. I think that they absolutely love their pet and they love everything about the pet, and they see the pet most of the time in their own environment where the pet is happy and relaxed and doesn't need to bite. Or if it is biting, it's usually biting them. And again, people will forgive that because they love their companion. And there's nothing stupid about that. That is the most natural instinct in the world. So the problem is recognizing it as a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I would say that, if you really feel that there is, something like that your dog is a real danger, of course you're going to go straight to someone that can really help you. You're not going to just try and get tips from TV. But how do you differentiate, Karen, between, lots of people have their dogs, they're out on a walk and the dog doesn't snarl or growl or but it sees another dog and it barks, and can jump out and stuff. Do you see that as a sign of coming aggression? Is that because I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to say, if your dog barks at people when you're out walking the dog, you definitely need to seek help because your dog is a potential biter. Or what are your thoughts on this?
I think barking is something that can cover an awful lot. It covers a huge range of different feelings and reactions on the dog's part. So it could be frustration that the dog can't get any closer. It might be surprise, well, what is that? Because I've never seen one of those before, or I haven't seen a great big dog or a very tiny dog before, or that person's wearing sunglasses. What's wrong with their eyes? So it can be all sorts of things. Barking can signify all sorts of things. So it's not necessarily barking that precedes a bite. I mean, and to be fair, if you see a dog that's barking, probably you won't approach it. The biting tends to happen without very much warning, because what people tend to do is they will notice the dog possibly growling, but they won't notice all the little signals we've talked about so many times on this podcast,
Sure.
Signs the dog's getting anxious. Biting is a strategy, it's a way of getting something to go away. So you have to be pretty close, or it's chasing you, so there are loads and loads of reasons why a dog might be aggressive. What I would recommend people do is get an expert in to say, okay, this dog is frustrated, it needs to have more contact. Or, okay, I'm looking at the signals here, I think this dog is actually quite nervous. We need to socialize it a bit more so that it doesn't feel the need to set off and bark. We've covered this in a podcast about barking as well. And I think there's a diagnostic thing, like a checklist that I put on. It's still on the site. It's free to download. You can go over it and sort it out. My suspicion is, and I don't know, but I would say that in this case, or with dogs that I know that have bitten in public, they haven't barked first. Possibly they have, but usually they don't. They just go straight up and bite, or the person walks past unwittingly and they just spin their head and bite. So there's lots of things that lead up to the final biting, but it doesn't take long. So I would honestly, if you've got, because what tends to happen is people, how they see their dog barking and they're embarrassed and they think, why are you doing this? So they start to avoid what's going on. And that's when the problems really start. So I'm not trying to sell my services. What I'm saying is get behind the reason why they're barking. If your dog's unhappy and you love your dog, and I hope you do, then help it relax, get it sorted out. If you go to someone and they start manhandling your dog and doing horrible things to it and telling you that the dog is dominant, then I would run a mile, because they aren't keeping up with, their education. They're not keeping up with their skills. That's quite an outdated view now. And there's loads and loads of much better ways of dealing with things that are a lot more long-term and a hell of a lot safer. So, you can't learn to train your dog off the TV any more than you can learn to swim. You need to have somebody there who's just really used to dogs, and somebody that you like and that is kind, but that is, how can I put it? Kind of shows the result there and then. If they can help you, then they can pretty much show you, okay, this is your dog, same dog, different handler, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it bit by bit. And the other thing I just wanted to add, John, something that came to my mind today, if you've got somebody who's trying to help your dog by letting it get to the point where it's barking and screaming and deliberately either inciting it to do that, if it's accidental, that's okay. Sometimes you have to see what a dog is going to do. But if they're kind of putting it right in front of the thing that it's barking at and then punishing it, that is a really bad strategy. So please, if you do get somebody who's helping you, and that is the kind of thing they do on a general basis, it's probably a good idea to get away from them, because first of all, you don't want your dog to practice behavior you don't like or don't want. And secondly, it's rather like setting a chip pan on fire and then going, okay, now we're going to learn to dampen the tea towel and throw it over. It's a very dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
So you can do things without getting to that point. You can help a dog a lot sooner than that. Nobody gets stressed. You're not embarrassed, and the dog learns to be happy. So, going back to the story that we started with, it's easy for me to say, oh, she should have got help before. She's a judge. She should know better. It's easy to be judgmental. But quite honestly, this thing happens so often. And my point was, it happens so regularly. The law doesn't protect us. And you need to seek help. As soon as you've got a worry, you can just sort it out. It doesn't cost much if you start early on. If you wait till you've got a big problem, you're looking at long-term rehabilitation that is expensive and time-consuming if you get the right people. But that is the nature of the job. Unfortunately, there aren't any decent people that will do it for nothing. So, so be prepared. And I'm not talking about going to classes either. You don't have to do that. You can, and there's some very good classes that will help you. But sometimes the situation needs dealing with in the street. So, look for somebody who really knows what they're doing, who's bothered to go and get qualified, who's bothered to sign up to an organisation who has checked them out, not just paid a membership fee. Yeah. And you'll be on the right track then.
All right then, Karen. Well then, let's change subject slightly and talk about making vet visits fun.
I love this topic. Do you know, it's something that happens so regularly, and it also comes along with grooming as well. I do see that a lot of dogs are frightened of the groomer, and it's no reflection on the groomer, and it's no reflection on the vet. It is a scenario that is infrequent and easily upsetting. So we're going to concentrate on vet visits today. If you think about it, when, say for example, let's get into our mindset when you go to the dentist or somewhere where potentially in the past somebody poked something at you and you perhaps didn't enjoy it a lot. I honestly don't know anyone. People will probably write in and tell us now, and I'd love to hear from you if you do. Does anyone really like the dentist? My kids like it because they get a sticker and nothing really happens to them. They kind of get, and the dentist goes, oh, look in their mouth, and, have you brushed your teeth? And, and they're kind of getting used to it. So that's quite nice. But it's when they get the pokey stick out and start jamming it in your teeth, I don't really know anyone that would say they actively enjoy that. So it is understandable that a dog, even if they visited the vet as a puppy for a puppy play group, or they've had a nice old romp round with their friends, when they go to the vet, there is a percentage of dogs that are going to find it stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I've got 5 dogs here, so going to the vets for, vaccinations or, minor infections or to get things checked. I'm definitely a Jewish Basset mom. The slightest sign that something's not right, I zip along to my brilliant vets in Vallentuna. Hi, Jarke and Eva. So I go to the vets a lot. So I think one of the great things about going frequently, and one of the things that my vets always recommend is, just pop in for a social visit. Get your dogs used to coming along to the vets. Come in and the girls who work there, like Marina and Sandra, who was there, they always come over and give the woofs a sweet, a treat, and spend a couple of minutes patting them. I mean, I go to a really small country vet just outside of Stockholm, and I've been to some really big, animal hospitals where they're often really, really busy. But one of the reasons that I choose a small vet that I trust, apart from their brilliant skills, is the fact that I can go in there and get a bit of personal service with the dogs when I'm training them up.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, the vet that I use, Animates, which is in Thirlby, which is near here, because you see more or less the same vet every time, and it's rather like going to see your GP. I like that. The animals like that. We are fortunate, touch wood, that we don't have many vet visits, but the point is, I know who I'm going to see, so I'm more relaxed. I know the routine, the receptionists are there, I know where they are, I'm not kind of looking around where to go. So I've been there before and I know it quite well. The dogs have been there. But even though, even if you do all of that, there are still people that will say to me, well, I've tried this and I've done that. The dog still hates going. So I think, again, remember that when your dog is coming into the vet, sometimes it can be quite a small room. I would try and choose a vet that has very light open space. I went to see a new vet in Peterborough that's opened not that long ago, and they've basically opened it up. It's a shop, so they've got this whole shop front, beautifully light. It's a lovely waiting area. The clinic areas are very light and bright and airy, so that's easier for the dogs to go into. If they're going into a very small space, they are going to feel a little bit trapped if you're not careful. It's always a good idea to try and get the vet to come out first. If you've got a dog that's a little bit nervous, if you've got a waiting area, they can come out into the waiting area, or there are very good vets who will come out into the car park or somewhere, as long as it's safe. They will come out and try and examine or treat the dog so that the dog doesn't feel enclosed, because coming into the vet, there's a lot of echoey noise, there's a kind of odd smell. There has been pain and illness there, and there have been dogs that have been in pain there, so your dog is going to pick that up. They really are. Like going to the dentist, you hear the drill, you instantly think, oh, crikey. You don't have to hear the sound of someone screaming, I mean, let's hope that doesn't happen. But, but imagine a dog's really good sense of smell, and they pick things up really quickly. So their hair may literally stand on end the minute they go in. So let's make it, first impressions really last. Get them used to it when they're tiny. If you haven't done that, again, ring up the vet, and if you know you've got a problem and you know you've got a vet visit coming, even if it's just a routine vaccination, make it easier for you. Ring up the vet and say, okay, when is it quiet that I can perhaps come a few times before I actually come for the vaccination jab? And if they're a good vet, they will tell you, yeah, that's fine, because it's good customer service for them as well. And it's easier for a vet to handle a calm dog
Absolutely.
than one, when they're trying to get all the vet nurses in to try and hold this poor animal. So, don't forget that aggression in a dog is a strategy. Like I said earlier, it is a way of going, get off me, don't touch me. And your dog's not thinking rationally. So it can be really upsetting to see your normal pet dog looking very nervous, tail goes down. I mean, I know Pickles, my little dog, normally his tail is curled over his back. That's the way that he looks. And at the vet, it's right underneath between his legs, and I can see that straight away. So I'm not pretending that my dogs love it. They will tolerate it, and I'm trying to get them to enjoy it more as I go along. But like I say, we don't need to go to the vet very often. So what my plan is, next time we go, we're going to go a few times before, so that I can see his tail happier.
Sure.
Because I don't like that. I don't like to see my normally happy little dog going, I don't like this. So I can sympathize. I know what it feels like myself.
I think it's important that if you are a new dog owner and you're listening to the show, maybe it's the first episode of the show you're listening to, is that Karen and I are not being super neurotic here. We are not saying oh, go to the vets, get your dog used to going to the vets, because we're worry guts, and this is a really sensible thing to do. And I know it's a hassle if you're a very, very busy person, and but if you've taken on a dog, I'm just bringing out my preaching stall here. If you've taken on a dog, you have taken on a commitment to give that dog a great, a great life. And of course, you want to do that. And some of that means doing slightly boring things like going along to the vets 2 or 3 times to desensitize the dog. And one of the things that I do is when I go, as well as getting to meet the people, is to take a treat that the dogs really love and they associate with the place, that they get nowhere else except when they go to the vets.
Yeah, that is a really good idea. I think that kind of novelty value. And like I say about my kids going to the dentist, they like it because they get a sticker. My son thinks it's wonderful because he gets a sticker with Spider-Man on. Now, I don't generally give him stickers for anything. That doesn't mean I'm not mean. It's just, I'll give him something different, but they're actually going, I know, no, they do get my kids get lots of nice things.
I'm sure they do.
As long as they've cleaned the house from top to bottom. No, I'm just kidding. But no, they go and they're literally looking at the sticker box on the desk, and I can see them straight away and they're quite old children, I mean, they're 9 and 12, so they're not little babies. They're there thinking, I like going because I get a sticker. So and dogs aren't children, but dogs are not stupid, and they are creatures that understand the anticipation of something amazing. So if they think that they're going to get a really nice bit of food, and I don't mean a bit of dried up liver, I mean, something fresh and tasty that's not going to upset your dog's tummy. You can take your pick really, but chicken, fresh meat is always a really good one. If they know that they're going to get that, then that helps. But if you are taking your dog in and the vet is coming towards the dog, kind of hands outstretched and saying hello, there are some dogs that really don't like that. So my advice to you is and even if you're a vet as well, and you're not sure how to approach it, or you want the dogs to enjoy your clinic, is to stand back and toss some treats down. Because if you do that, then, and if the dog gobbles them up, then fantastic. You can tell the difference between a dog that's a bit standoffish. If the dog won't eat, though, that is a massive indicator that the dog is not happy. So therefore, you've got to be prepared then for when you examine the dog. Okay, this dog's not 100% happy. I just need to have a bit of extra care here. And it doesn't take long to do that kind of thing, because it's very, very busy in clinic. And, it's kind of in and out, and you have like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes if you want to keep the clinic running on time. So go in, have your really fantastic reward, like John says. And I think you're right, John. Obviously, we could be saying, oh, be careful, this might happen, that might happen. But that's kind of my job. So I want to make sure that we're prepared before we go in. I always take a little bag of treats in there.
Or a
and
toy.
I'm seeing, while I'm waiting, is the dog eating? Is he eating? Oh, he's eating. Okay, good. I know he's okay. So it's like a little mini assessment for me. And he's my dog, so I want him to enjoy it. And if the vet or the vet nurse does something that I'm not happy with, then I am more than prepared to say, actually, can we just give it 5 minutes? So I would, but they're great in my vet practice.
One of the things that I do, Karen, is that when I'm grooming my dogs, and they love, they really love being brushed. It's a really nice thing, they enjoy being brushed. Is that I put my right hand, the fingers of my right hand, under their jaw. I don't know what you call it in English, this bit.
I don't know, under their jaw is a good description.
And it just to, you gently hold the head in place, yeah? You're not even holding it, you're just sort of a hand, because when you're practicing to stack a dog to show a basset, in a show, you lift their lift the tail up with one hand, and then you typically stand them, and then you put your fingers underneath their jaw, not squeezing it, but just gently there. And I find that, if you associate that, the hand with the jaw, and then, my left hand brushing the dog, they start to feel that as soon as I put that hand there, anytime, it's something that's relaxing, that they've learned. Yeah. And so when they go to the vets, because their bassets are super super short, you put them on the table, the vet starts to examine them, hand straight there, stroking, and I can feel, in my experience, that the dogs, although they are slightly this is a strange environment, that some of these rooms, they can pick up on the vibes, but just that sort of habit of associating something physically good as well is also another calming effect.
Definitely. And it's an insurance policy. I quite often, even from really early puppyhood, I teach the puppy to deal with restraint, mild restraint, but the kind of restraint that they're going to get. So collar restraint, lead and collar restraint, holding restraint like you describe, and sometimes a bit of invasive behavior, because a vet has to examine the dog. They've got to get this dog either better, and bearing in mind you might be taking your dog into the vet and they might be in pain or just feeling really ill. So you've got to do all this before the dog feels rough, because otherwise it's just making life really hard for the dog and for you. So you get them used to every little part of it. You get them used to with something nice in your hand. You don't just make them tolerate it. You have part of their really nice treat ration, and you go all over the dog, and you check, and you put your face near, and you touch them with something that could be like a stethoscope. And you need to handle them around the back end, because if they need their temperature taking, they're going to need a thermometer, up the backside. So there's all these things. I mean, don't practice that at home unless you are a trained professional. But what I'm saying is, the dog needs to get used to people moving all around it. And often your dog is used to you, but they're not used to other people. So do practice it. Even if you did kind of an intensive training session just before you go to the vet. So maybe the 5 days before the vet, you've done a lot of handling work with your dog, and then you go to the vet, is going to set you ahead of if you just don't do that. So I think the problem is, you don't always know how your dog's going to be.
Sure.
Sometimes they're fine, sometimes they're not fine.
But can I say...
And as I said... No, I was just going to say, as I said last time, the last time I took my dog, he wasn't very happy. The time before, he'd been as good as gold and really happy. So I just thought, okay, there's a marker for me. Sorry, you were going to say?
No. I just wanted to pick you up there, because you sort of said, don't take the temperature of your dog unless you're, unless you're trained to do it. I would actually disagree. Well, what I would say, because because I'm a breeder, I have to be able to take the temperature of my dogs, when they're going to go into whelp. One of the things, though, it's a really good indication of the health of your dog. If I call my vets and say, I'm not sure that something's wrong or blah, 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 they'll say, what's the temperature of your dog? So I would say that, when you go early with a younger dog, you say, can you show me what I need to do?
Show me how to do it. Yeah, that's really, I guess that's really what I meant. I meant, don't do it if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's the same with emptying the anal glands and things like that. Some dogs get impacted anal glands, and you need to really be shown how to do it.
Sure.
There's lots of ways of learning how to do it. There's no law saying you can't do it, but I just think I would want someone to show me first.
Yeah, I'm just
and
being
once
pedantic.
I know what I'm doing, then I feel more confident. I don't want people kind of poking bits. Anyway, let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
But the last thing that I think is just, it's so important. And please, if the vet says, please leave the room, make a decision, because the vet is probably asking you to leave because you're worried as well, and it might not be helping the dog. So don't take it personally. If you would rather stay, then you can always express your opinion. I do have owners that say, well, they had to ask me to go out, and then the owner feels really bad about that. And I think, well, it might be that your dog is worse when you're there, and it might be that the vet is kind of taking a punt on that. It might be they just need the space in the room because they need to call in some staff to help them. So don't take it personally. You can always say, why would you like me to leave? And you're not arguing. You're just, because it's your animal, you just want to make sure. The other thing is, if the vet says we're going to have to muzzle the dog, please don't take that as an insult to your dog. Vets are very used to handling animals, and they do it all the time, and they are, they have a code of practice, and they are acting in the interests of the dog. You do get vet bashing going on, just as in dog training, you get owner bashing going on. But I strongly believe that vets are acting in the interests of the dog. If you've got a problem with your vet, then there is a complaint system to go through. So it's better to deal with a problem if you have one. But if they say we're going to need a muzzle, don't think, oh my gosh, my dog's been labelled. I did have one lady rang me in absolute floods of tears because she'd been told that her dog was severely aggressive and all this sort of thing. We knew the dog was scared of being handled. She'd rung ahead to say that, but when the dog was there, yes, it is difficult to handle it, and we're working on it. But unfortunately, the procedure had to be done, and it had to be done quickly. So they had to kind of warn everyone, you are likely to get bitten by this animal. So therefore, we need to muzzle it, and we need the space, so the owner needs to go out of the room. So I don't think that there was anything wrong exactly, but
Sure.
The label can be quite harmful, because then you start to feel like you're failing, or your lovely pet at home suddenly turns into this misunderstood creature. It's not like that, honestly. I don't think it is. I'm sure lots of people will have different stories, and I would like to hear them, but I think stay with the dog if you can. But if the vet asks you to leave, respect them as a professional. If they put a muzzle on your dog, it's because they're protecting themselves and their stuff. If they got bitten, then they can't work. So it's not there to punish the dog, and it's not there to punish you as an owner.
It's just insurance if it happens. I do think there are a couple of things here. And we've talked quite a bit about the role of, of the dog, and getting the dog calm and going in and sort of practicing going along in a good situation. I do think as an owner, you've got to go in calmly as well yourself. I check my emotional pulse before I go in. I just take a moment, unless it's a massive emergency, I just take a moment before I take the dog out of the car to remind myself that the dog is relying on me going into this. I'm going in, I'm calm. I show the dog that, that this is not stressful, even if I'm really worried. One of the hardest things that I've had to go through is taking a dog to be put down, and really fighting and going through all those things to make sure that my dog trusted me every step of the way. So I do think that's important. I think the other thing is, and I think you touched on this when you said, that we as owners can say, could you do this? Could you do that? And ask questions. I know when my dog is stressed, because I know my dog really well, and I can feel when they are stressed out. And I'm not afraid to say to the vet, well, I can feel that my dog is really stressed here. Could we take a moment to pause? Do you know what I mean? Daisy, because she got this really, really nasty infection in her eye after she got her eye scratched. And having her eye examined was really, really stressful for her. this here was a vet, without going into details, was pulling her eyelids apart and squeezing lots of things in.
And it must be hurting. Yeah.
Exactly. And he said, she's in quite a lot of pain here. And I said, well, do we have to do this with her standing on the table? Is there anything else we could do? And he took a moment and he said, do you know what? I think what we'll do is we'll just give her something to knock her out gently, just for half an hour or something. I mean, they didn't put her right under. It was just to, literally knock her out, to lie down and be in a deep sleep. So, they could examine it. And one of the girls who worked there, she had to leave the room because she found it really difficult to look at. She was quite new there. And, there I was having to sort of hold the eyes open of Daisy and really be involved. I mean, they involve me a lot because I go there a lot. They know me. But even so, I had to remain calm. I had to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there are some times where you being there is a familiar presence for the dog, so it actually makes it slightly easier. And the other thing that you've also said, which I think does happen, and certain practices seem to do it more than others, is that your dog may well be easier to examine if they're mildly sedated. And again, if the vet recommends that to you, if they recommend that to you, then it's for they're acting in everyone's best interest, I believe. But you don't have to have these things done. The vet will tell you what they believe they should do and why they should do it, and then the decision is over to you as long as it's in the animal's favor, sort of thing. So don't be shocked or horrified if that happens. I was going to say, I do know that sometimes it will make a note on the record if the animal is not happy with being examined. Quite often there will be a note on the veterinary notes, just so that the vet is pre-prepared, because it's not always the same vet. And for whatever reason, they need to be aware that there is a dog that may snap at them, it might be uncomfortable, it might this, that, and the other, so they can be prepared. So again, it's not a label and it's not this big sort of sign you have to hang around your neck saying nasty. It just is. This is a job we've got to do. We want to do it as least sort of stressful as possible for everyone. And that's really, I mean, I'm sure that everyone's got examples where that hasn't happened. And as I say, I would urge you, if you do have a complaint, go back to the practice and complain if that is how you feel. Better that they know than you tell everyone else but them.
Sure. I mean, when you say complaint, it doesn't have to be an aggressive, it can just be, I just want to give you some feedback because, vets, vets really like, they want feedback because they, as you rightly say, they want to be doing the best for your animals. I think also the other thing we have to remember here is if you're listening to the show and you don't actually have a dog, you're listening to the show because you're, interested in having a dog, you're curious about having a dog. I think one of the things that we're doing here is that we are sharing just what is really involved in having a dog, the commitment that you have to make, that, some people are very money orientated and they're scared of the vet's costs. And, this can be what happens, that you go to the vet and the vet says, well, I think we really need to sedate the dog to just, check something. And this can be I don't know what it's like in terms of costs in the UK, but, here in Sweden, that can mean an extra, I suppose, something like an extra 80 quid or an extra £100.
It varies from vet to vet. Yeah, I mean, yes, it can. And I think that's, you suddenly start to appreciate our National Health Service over here, where you don't have to pay very much for medical treatment, when you realise how much it really does cost. And I don't think the vet's doing it to make a profit out of you. That is kind of the way. But, and again, I'm sort of not, I want to stress that I'm not sitting here on high telling vets what to do, telling people what to do. This is my opinion. This is how I see it from my angle. And my angle is that I see a lot of dogs with behaviour problems that visit the vet. Now, I realise there are an awful lot of dogs out there that don't have this. And there are a lot of vets out there that are, never, that don't even bat an eyelid at, okay, we're going to go out into the car park, we're going to do this and that. And they're really, really good. So that's not the intention. The intention is if you're an owner and you've had this problem and you want to get started on sorting it out, then here are some ideas for you. And here's a bit of perspective from my point of view, obviously from you, John, points of view as well. And hopefully it's helpful. But feedback is also really important to us here at the podcast. So if you don't agree, let us know. If you think, if you think we've said a good point, and you want to agree with it, let us know. We rely on your feedback as well. And I think that's really important for everyone to have this kind of community where we are entitled to agree and disagree, so that we can just say, well, no, my experience was different to that. I had a really bad time and the vet didn't do this and that. And I didn't do that with my dog, or the dog was surprised me by being really good. We want to hear all of that from everyone, because it just helps us all learn a bit more about what's going on in our dogs' heads.
And if you have any comments about the show or questions, you can get in touch. You can get in touch with Karen on Twitter, and that's twitter.com/wildpaw. Or you can send me a tweet on twitter.com/John Buskell, JONBUSCALL. Or you can email us at podcast@intellidogs.com. And, if you're going to email us, yes, you can scribble us a message. Or if you'd like to send us a sound file, we'll play it on the show. And talking of sound files, we always love sound files of your dog's woofing, barking. That's always great. And if you do like the show, we'd love it if you write us a review on iTunes. It's really good to spread the word about the Wild Boar Dog podcast, because we're very, very committed to building a community of dog lovers and people interested in their canine friends to really improve our understanding of how we can live better lives with our dogs. And if you're looking for more in-depth training advice, why not build your own dog training manual tailored to your needs? And you'll find that at Karen's website, www.intellidogs.com.
We've got some really exciting things coming up. And in fact, last week I went to a celebrity bash at the Dogs Trust.
Ooh.
I know. I was really fortunate. I was invited by Dogs Today magazine. So thank you, Beverly and team, for inviting me along. We had a lovely afternoon tea at the Waldorf in London. And I did have my little dog with me. Bonnie came along. We went on to the awards ceremony, and I met some of my clients who, sort of quite well known, and it was just terrific to see them. Saw lots and lots of really interesting people, lots of famous people. So I was a bit starstruck, to be honest, although Bonnie coped with it very well. And my best and most weirdest experience. I met Dawn Porter again, and hello Dawn, and Potato, her little dog, which I met for the first time, which was terrific. And her other half, Chris O'Dowd, who's a very well-known film actor. Absolutely lovely people, just so nice. And their dog is fantastic with them, and they're so good with it. But I was there, there was all sorts of people there, but I was, and this is a serious name drop, so be ready. I was there, and Bonnie was a little bit uncertain, and I wanted her to go to the toilet, actually. So I thought she needs to relax a bit. So I plonked her down on the grass a little bit away from everyone. And she was kind of looking a little bit timid. So, because there was a lot going on, there was a heck of a lot of noise. I mean, she's used to hustle and bustle, but wow, so I sat her down, and I just got her to do her little paw trick, which is very simple. It's nothing special, but you hold out your hand, she puts her paw in your hand, and then you give her the treat, and then you do it again and do it again. And I just did that to get her back into a frame of mind of, just calm down. And I do urge people to have something fun like that to do now and again, because it just brings the dog back into, oh yeah, it's you, I'm with you, everything's fine. And somebody came over to me and went, I want to teach my dog to do that. Why will you teach my dog to do that? And I looked up, and it was Britt Ekland, the film star. And I went, oh, and she's got a little chihuahua called Tequila. And Tequila was running in around being really friendly. I was very interested in Bonnie. So I was just thinking, wow, Tequila and Bonnie. But and she said that Tequila comes on stage with her when she does appearances and things, and he'll run on stage for her, but she wanted him to do the paw trick. So she asked me for my business card.
Oh, wow. Britt Eklund.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
She was lovely. And the one thing she said when she presented an award, so did you hear the name drop there? It was a massive crash just then. But when she presented the award that she was giving out, the one thing she said was that she was so happy that everyone could get together, bring their dogs to a party where we all wore pretty dresses and makeup and got ourselves dressed up in nice shoes, but our dogs were there as well.
Yeah.
And she was dead right. She was so excited about it. And I think, yeah, it was a great party. The dogs were fabulous. Everyone, there was Brix Start-Smith from... There's a program on television called Gox Fashion Fix, and she's like this style guru. She's beautiful. She had these amazing shoes on. She brought one of her little pugs along, and all the dogs were just kind of mingling. And so many people have their dogs and love them and just want to incorporate them into their lives. But, they're not welcome. But at this event, they were welcome. It was a great award ceremony. There's some fantastic and really well-deserved awards. And we had a blast. And, some of the people that won the awards, they just totally devote themselves to their dogs, absolutely and utterly. And it was absolutely a great night. It was a joy. It really was. So I didn't get many photos, I'm afraid, because I was just so kind of starstruck.
But
it just
are you
shows
going to
doesn't
post anything on your website?
I might do a little write up or something like that, because it was just a lot of fun, and I know that I've seen other photos that I'm sure I can borrow off people and say, can I use these, because there's some great pictures of the event. Bonnie got filmed for a TV program, but I don't think it's going to be on. The Apprentice, You're Fired is a show on television where they have candidates that want to go and work with a top businessman called Lord Sugar, and he sort of deselects one every week, and the catchphrase is "You're fired."
Oh,
and
like
sort of
with the American show with Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's like Donald Trump. Yeah, so so the US version, you're fired or whatever, and then the last thing is you're hired. If they actually get through to the final, and they wanted Bonnie, because Bonnie will wave. And they wanted Bonnie to do it to the camera. Well, I couldn't get behind the camera because the camera was poked right in her face. I mean, she coped with it so well, but she was literally half an inch away from the camera. And this lady was going, can you get her to do it to the camera as well as sideways on? I couldn't move the lady out of the way. So we didn't manage it quite well, I'm afraid.
All right then, Karen. Well, I guess it's time we draw things to a close, as we've been going, I think, nearly 40 minutes or so.
Okay. Oh my gosh, we got chatting.
All right, Karen. So until next time, remember, be nice to your woofs. Isn't that right?
Yeah, be good to your dogs. Be good to yourself. Don't beat yourself up if something goes wrong. Just go and get a professional to help you, and you'll be on your way right as rain before long. Promise. Promise.
The Wild Paw Dog Podcast this week was sponsored by Dougal's Den, www.dougalsden.co.uk. Amazing finds for the furry kind.